Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
Doing all right?
Yeah, how are things on your end?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good.
Where are you located again?
Tennessee. We're in Warren County, Tennessee, between Nashville and Chattanooga.
Oh, cool. Going back, tell me your story. How'd you end up getting involved in American Bulldogs, and why'd you choose that breed specifically?
Well, when I was about 15, 16 years old, I always wanted a pit bull. Couldn't tell you why I wanted a pit bull, but that's just the breed that I was always infatuated with. I really seen really quick how misunderstood the breed was. A lot of people thought they was just all aggressive and vicious, and I seen a different side of them. So I probably owned those for 8-9 years, and the negativity around it, and at times the community around the pit bull just wasn't up my alley, I guess you could say. There was a lot of controversy involved in them and things like that, so I decided to get into a different breed, and I'd always been interested in American Bulldogs. So we searched for a couple of years, the type that we wanted. Back then, I always referred to them as Scott type and Johnson type, and we found one that was this close to what we was looking for, and purchased that dog and owned him for a couple of years. Well, actually, we still currently own that dog, but after a couple of years of owning him, I really seen that there may be an opportunity to produce dogs that could actually serve a purpose. We started letting ours out with chickens and things like that, just seeing how he interacted with them. And I got to noticing one day that he was taking the chickens back up to the coop. They would free range, and I got to noticing he'd take them back up near the coop and couldn't figure out why he was doing it. And I just started watching him for a couple of days and realized that when chicken hawks would get in the area, he would notice them in the air, and he would take the chickens back up towards the coop underneath all the trees. And I thought, that seems like a pretty smart dog to do that and recognize the threat. And after that, the chickens just kind of took to him. So wherever he was at, the chickens would just follow him around. So I decided to start a breeding program, and we didn't have any raised kennels at the time. Now we went to raised kennels. So he had a injury on his foot, and he had to be elevated off the ground for a couple of weeks. That way he couldn't get any dirt into his wounds and things like that. So we made a makeshift raised deck on a utility trailer, and I got to noticing that the chickens would go to him and roost on the rail of the trailer. They was completely comfortable with him, and after that, it just kind of inspired me to create a farm type dog. I'd always read about it, and then I slowly started to see that these dogs could actually perform that type of work. So that's what got our start on starting our kennel up.
You ended up with a dog that had natural herding abilities, and kind of wherever you kept your chickens, he wanted to see that they stayed there. And then after the fact, they just started following him around because he was kind of looking after them. That is really cool. What would you say the main thing is that separates the American Bulldog from, say, the Pit Bull or the Bully even?
Well, they're more active than the Bullies. I did own a few Bullies. I believe they're more active and energetic, and their stamina is above what a typical Bully is. As far as the difference between the American Pit Bull Terrier and the American Bulldog, to me, is the American Pit Bull Terrier just possesses more drive 9 times out of 10. Meaning they're ready to go all the time, whereas these Bulldogs are a little bit more calm to me.
Right. Now, what do you have them involved in anything else, like hog work or weight pull or anything like that?
We don't do any weight pull. We have had a couple of our dogs catch pigs for us on our property. We don't have a hunting season in Tennessee, in my area at least. There's a few counties that allow it, but so we just when the opportunity presents itself, we utilize our dogs that way.
Do you get wild pigs that come on your land occasionally, or?
No, we raise some pigs. We do have them in our area as far as wild hogs go, but haven't seen any on my property. So we just use them for our domestic pigs.
I gotcha. So basically the same way they'll round up the chickens, they'll round up the pigs as well.
Yeah, they'll catch and hold the pigs for us and do minimal damage, to be honest with you. It was surprising the first time we done it to see the tussle going on between the dog and the hog. And when everything was said and done, there was hardly any damage to the pig at all, which is a good thing because we raise pigs for meat here.
And that's just kind of on your land for your family kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
Gotcha.
I strongly believe that a dog, a bulldog especially, can help someone achieve self-sufficiency a little bit easier.
That's awesome. Hats off to that, man. You're self-sufficient as you could be at the moment, but you're already raising your own food, and that's awesome. I want to get there someday. Let me ask you this. Have you, when it comes to the American Bulldog, would you say they're a good personal protection dog?
Well, I don't have experience in that, so I can't answer for myself, but I do talk to people that have done that with these dogs, and they've seen great results out of them. I purchased a dog back in February from Don Matthews, and he does some bite work and protection work. And I feel like that they are good for that as well. They're a very versatile breed. They can be used for all different types of jobs. That's another thing that is good with these dogs is 90% of people that think they're going to do something mischievous on your property, if they see these dogs, they may rethink their plan. So they're good for that too, just the visual.
Yeah, just the visual alone. You see that, right. You know what? I'll pick the next house. I think I'll go next door or something.
Exactly.
So in a nutshell, tell me, I've done a video on it, obviously. I think I actually stole one of your video clips and you contacted me about it. Tell me in a nutshell the history, and if there's anything I missed. I mean, you don't got to go deep, but tell me in a nutshell where you think the American Bulldog started, and if there was anything you think I missed on my video.
Well, I have watched your videos, and I think that you were spot on. There's a lot of controversy and different theories out there, but a lot of people, including myself, I believe that the American Bulldog is the closest descendant to the original Bulldog that came over with the settlers. They used these dogs on farms and ranches, as what we've always read about. It was a necessity for, the building of this country, if you ask me, because the way the settlers in this country was built, it was built from east to west. I believe if it wasn't for these dogs, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to make it further out west. So they were just an all-around utility farm dog. And that's what we're trying to get back to, is because a lot of people are not breeding for that anymore, which I'm not bashing anyone, because people don't need to breed for that anymore. We don't live the way that we lived 200-300 years ago. But a lot of these dogs now are a little more drivey, I feel like, than they used to be or should be. These dogs have been around here for 300 years. In America. So that's the theory that I run with. A lot of people have different theories. A lot of people believe that the American Pit Bull Terrier is the closest descendant to the original Bulldog. But to me, if you look at Peyton's, you see a different story. But that's just my opinion on that.
So are you trying to preserve that drive in your dogs from back then? Are you hoping to preserve that in your own way?
Well, I don't want a drivey dog, and when I use the term drivey, I'm talking about prey drive. I don't think that we need, on a homestead or a farm setting, we don't need a dog that's like that, because your farm animals are going to come up missing and dead. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So what I'm trying to produce and maybe preserve, I guess, is a calm bulldog that has the drive but knows when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And that's can be difficult at times with some dogs. We want our dogs to show that drive, but then we want our dogs to show us that they can restrain themselves. So, I mean, these dogs, I've had my dogs do anything from kill rabbits, groundhogs, and possums just to protect the garden. And a lot of people think that that's, not a huge necessity, but I can promise you, when you're growing green beans and they start to grow up your fence line that you got them planted on your pole beans, and then a groundhog or a rabbit comes down and wipes them all out, you're going to need something to be out there, because you're not going to be out there all the time. And we've had our dogs help us out in just small situations like that. Anything from that to chasing off coyotes that's on the property. So that's our goal, is to produce just a people-pleasing dog that's still a bulldog at the same time.
Right. You've had coyotes on your property before?
Oh yeah. They come up right onto the property. We'll see them for a few days in a row, and then we might not see them again for 2 weeks. But where we live in a little valley, and the coyotes will talk to each other from one ridge to the next ridge, and then they'll come down in the valley every couple of weeks. And these animals aren't afraid to come right up to a house. I've had them 10 foot from my porch before.
So the dogs will take care of it, though. I mean,
oh yeah. If it's a lone coyote, it's a little bit easier for the dogs to get that coyote off the property. And a lot of people don't realize that coyotes will travel single sometimes. They don't always travel in packs, but we have 10 bulldogs on the property, so they're going to need to bring a big pack if they want to do any damage over here.
You said you have how many?
We have 10 bulldogs right now.
Nice. God put these animals here for us. We're supposed to be living off the land, honestly, and I think that's a great thing. I would rather a dog who's willing to work and protect his property.
I'm right there with you. That's exactly why I'm doing this. It's one thing that makes me understand and realize that there is indeed a higher power, God, and He has provided us with everything that we need to survive right here on the land.
Yeah,
whether
exactly.
it's not always going to be pretty, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way life is. There's a food chain and a life cycle, and that's just part of it to me.
100%. So let me ask you this. Have you noticed any real problems with the breed as far as, well, we already covered temperament. Have you noticed any problems with the breed as far as health is concerned?
Well, I'm fairly new to the breed. I've owned them for going on 5 years now. And the breeders that I get my dogs from, I try my best to buy from, if I'm going to purchase a dog, to buy from somebody that can show me the family on their yard. And I've bought from people that have dogs that are 12 years old and are still working. So I haven't experienced anything health-wise with my dogs. Things that I have heard is like your typical hip dysplasia and things like that, which they say that with a lot of breeds, especially larger type breeds. But I have heard quite a few people mention ACL tears and things like that, because these dogs, they work, they get down, they're really active, and things like that can happen. Just like athletes, they're going to have injuries and things like that. I don't know that would necessarily be a health or a genetic disorder. It could be, but that's the only two things that I've heard mentioned, and I haven't experienced anything on my yard yet.
Okay. Now, is it, I'm not really familiar with your area. Is it generally hot year-round there?
We get pretty mild. Of course, it gets hot and cold to us because this is where we live, but I'd say for the most part, it's pretty mild. We had a pretty decent winter this year with a few snows that was 5-6 inches, dipped into single digits, and then in the summertime we'll reach once it gets July, August, we'll be in the 90s hanging out there quite often. It can break 100, triple digits pretty easy, and the humidity is fairly high for us too in this area.
And how do your dogs handle that? Are they still outside? No problem?
Yeah, I believe that a dog is meant to be outside. I don't look down on anyone that has indoor dogs at all, because we do bring our dogs inside at times. But that's another thing is that I look for is how hardy these dogs can be, whether it's out in the cold or out in the heat. And I don't see any issues with my dogs.
When puppies are born, how long does it usually take before you say, okay, this is a good one, I'm keeping this one? Like, what is the process of selection for you?
Well, obviously you can't keep all the pups. I don't want to become flooded with too many dogs at one time. So we do try to get our dogs in homes by the time they're 8 weeks old. But once the dogs are up and moving around, what I do is, and we do all kinds of stuff, some stuff that might not amount to anything, but we still do it. But basically, I'm looking for a middle of the pack dog is what I say. I don't want the dog or the pup that's over in the corner shy. I don't want the pup that's going around causing problems with all the other puppies and is just the most rambunctious of the litter. So we look at them, and then we spend a lot of time with the pups, and I like to find the pups that like to lock on to me and pay attention to me. And then from there, once we find a couple of dogs, because we usually keep a few out of every litter, and see how they progress. And then after that, we do a lot of measuring. I'm measuring their legs. I'm measuring their muzzle. I'm holding them up and comparing them. I'm measuring, their head sizes. I do all of that stuff. And we'll keep a few. And then we have some people that's kind of on deck and helps us out. If we have a dog that we keep and that dog's a year old and it's just not turning out to be what we expected or wanted, then we can place those dogs in homes. But I really like a middle of the pack type dog, one that once he starts moving around, or they like to focus on the people, because I found that those dogs are the easiest ones to train, because they're going to try to gauge what you want them to do, and you're going to have better results if you ask me. That's just my experience on it.
I gotcha. Well, okay, I'm not too experienced in American Bulldogs. Like, I've only relayed the information I found in the video I did and left it at that. So I'm aware that there is the Johnson, the Scott, the hybrid, and then I heard there's a painter line. I'm not too familiar with that, and a couple others. What would you classify the dogs on your yard as, more or less?
Well, I get a lot of heat over this topic. My dogs all go through NKC. Per NKC, they have two standards. They have the standard type and the bully type. To me, my dogs have to fit in one category or the other. So I classify my dogs and consider them standard type. I don't refer to them as Scott type or Johnson type anymore. They stopped that a while back from people that I've talked to, because it was causing some confusion around the American Bulldog. And you can have, like my dog Nealon, that's my main stud right now in my yard. He's got Hines and Johnson in him, and he's got a little bit of Scott. So I can't call that dog, or if I call that dog a Scott dog, and not a standard, people are going to look through his pedigree and wonder where all the Scott's at, because there's not a whole lot of Scott in there. He's mostly Hines with some Johnson. So I think it causes confusions, but I classify mine as standard. I know there's all kinds of other classifications for them, but the way I see it, they have to fit one or the other. So I call mine standards.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the color, what's the deal there? Because I've heard 10 different things as far as what the color should be, what it is, whether the hybrid plays a role in it or not. What's your take on that?
To me, color doesn't matter to a certain extent. Now, I don't want any Merle dogs. Merle, I don't believe, is a dog that should be naturally in a Bulldog gene. A lot of people say it should be 75% white, and I've spoke to some people about this. there was a guy by the name of Bruce Huffmaster that I was talking to about this topic, and he thinks, and I agree with his theory, is 200 or 300 years ago, when people didn't have electricity all the time, they needed to see a dog hunt and do its work, and the easiest dog for that would be a white dog. So people started breeding the white dogs more often than the brindle or the black, and that's why for a long period of time these dogs were predominantly white. But when I go to Alan Scott's yard or Don Matthews' yard and I see solid brindle dogs or solid black dogs, to me that gives me the green light and say, if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. So as far as colors go, I don't look too deep into the colors.
I gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Do you regularly dock your dog's tails?
No, I was talking to Don about that. He actually had a dog out of the same litter that I purchased one from that was born with a bobtail, a really, really short bobtail. And he contacted the breeder and wanted to ask her if, and I'm not going to mention their name, he wanted to ask her, do your dogs throw these bobtails quite often? And she started docking the tails. And it's his belief and my belief too that if an American Bulldog's tail is docked, and it's probably to hide some kind of flaw. I know there's been other people that do it and they have their reasoning for it, to prevent injuries in the woods and things like that. But I leave my dogs as natural as possible. I think that's the way they're born. That's the way they need to stay. That's just my opinion.
I gotcha. And you'd say the same goes for dew claws and everything?
We don't remove dew claws or anything. Crop the ears. We don't do any of that.
Okay. So outside of your program, who are you digging the most right now, as far as who you admire in the American Bulldog game? I mean, obviously, Don Matthews and Alan Scott, but is there anybody outside of that you're really, digging their program?
Yeah, there's another guy in Tennessee, Jack Fuquay. He's in Big Sandy, Tennessee. He does a lot of breeding with Alan, but he also has a lot of his own stuff. Kentucky Lake Kennels. He's been, just fantastic for me. He's kind of like, I call him kind of like my mentor. He may not see him as being my mentor, but I believe he's my mentor, because anytime I need to reach out to him and ask him a question, he's always willing to pick the phone up. I'm looking to get another male off of him pretty soon. The guy's got outstanding dogs, really. Alan and him just done a breeding here recently, so Alan really highly respects him, and I do too. He's just got some awesome dogs.
So what do you feed your dogs?
Well, we feed ours kibble. We don't do the raw. Every now and again we'll mix in some raw. I know a lot of people are real high on that here lately, but we feed Diamond and then Victor. We kind of do a mix of it. Some of these dogs are hard to keep weight on at times because they are so active, and I've found that right now what's working for us is a Diamond high energy and a Victor. I think it's a multi-pro high protein feed. It's in the yellow bag. That's what I've been feeding my dogs.
You have children?
Yeah, we got two boys.
How do the dogs interact with them?
Oh man, they can go from. We've literally had a dog catch a pig, wrestle around, and you don't know what that's like until you see it. Even pigs on these farms, they're still bullheaded, and 5 minutes later can be sitting in my kid's lap, just getting petted. I trust my dogs 100% with my kids.
So what are your goals moving forward?
We're about to get into getting some goats. That's the next kind of test and project on our list, is getting some goats and seeing how some of the dogs interact with them. Mainly our productions. We have a couple of productions that are really giving us some positive results. So we're thinking we need to move on from pigs and chickens and into goats, because we want those type of animals that are going to help us and some form or fashion. And I believe that pigs, chickens, and goats, when you're looking at homesteads, those are some of the more popular animals. And that's really what we want to do, is mimic a homestead, even though that's what we're trying to create is a homestead. We're setting up a training. We have a 1 acre fenced in dog yard separated. And we're trying to set up a small farm to test our dogs that way and see how they interact. And once we get the dogs that we want, then we'll expand to the backside of our property, and our dogs will no longer be in training. They'll be performing the job then.
Mm. So pretty much just letting them kind of roam the property at their own free will.
Yep, that's the goal, is to move away from kennels as much as possible. Kennels are definitely a necessity, but the less kennel time these dogs have, the happier they are, from what I've seen.
Now, do you ever worry about, like, well, let me ask you this first. How much land do you have?
Yeah, we have 8 acres.
8 acres. Now, is there people that live close by?
Yeah, on 2 sides of us. Our property goes onto 3 different roads. It's oddly shaped, but there are 2 other houses that touch our property. And that is on our radar, wondering how they'll react, because those properties do have dogs. But we're really interested, talking about how we select dogs, going back to that. That's another thing that we look at. I want a dog that respects its boundaries when I give him to him. I don't want a dog that's jumping the fence or climbing out all the time. That's not something that we'll necessarily cull a dog from the breeding program for. But if it's something that's happening all the time, because as I mentioned earlier, these dogs are a liability, something like that, we just can't stand for it. And for the most part, our dogs respect the boundaries, and something can walk by 50 or 100 yards by the fence and they don't think anything about it. But once that dog comes close to the fence, then they know this is my area to protect. Most of our dogs typically wait till the threat comes to them, I guess you could say.
Right. So are you pretty set with your program right now? You have the look, the attitude, everything you want out of a dog. Would you say you're pretty set, or are there things that you want to add to it, or things that you want to take away? And I'm talking about like the majority, a general question.
Well, no, we're so early on in it that we're still tweaking. I hope to be where I want to be within 5 more years. I don't know if that's possible or not. We're, like I mentioned about Jack Fuquay, looking to get another dog off of him, and that'll be the last dog that we purchase, hopefully, for a while. Everything else will just be bred that's on our yard. So, yeah, I'm in the very early phases of it. We've got some good results so far, but there's only so much that there's only so far I can get with the amount of dogs that I've produced so far. Can't breed them too tight, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. How do you normally go about that? Do you line breed, or I know some people inbreed only at a very specific time. People will inbreed.
Well, I started out with what I would consider an outcross. The 2 dogs that I first bred didn't have any common ancestry within like 5-6 generations. So I did that so that when we win, or if we produce something that we want, we can breed back as tight as we would like. I won't do any necessarily inbreedings as far as brother to sister or anything like that. I may do some half siblings and then some skip a generation and line breed back, like a grandparent to my grandson or daughter or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's basically what the dogs show me. I'll try to match the dogs up on their personalities, and I don't really focus right now on the look of the dog or the coloring of the dog. I got to first produce a dog that acts the way that I want it to act.
Right. Do you want your dogs to also maintain that ability to go at man as well if they have to?
Yeah, that is something that we need here. We've had some instances where dogs like that would definitely come in handy. Believe it or not, a lot of people think that a lot of the crime only happens in the inner city, but where we live, the cops rarely patrol, or the sheriff's department rarely patrols, and the people that are up to no good know that. So yeah, I would like to I would like for my dogs to have that in it, and it may be possible that we run two different lines, one that's geared more towards that and one that's geared more towards the farm type work. I don't know if I can get all of it out of the dog, you know what I mean? I'm unsure of that right now, but I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced, like, have any of your dogs ever got sick or anything like that?
No, not to this point. So far, so good. Haven't, I mean, of course, our dogs roam the property, they get injured and things like that, but as far as
Like
anything
allergies,
genetic,
parvo, anything like that?
yeah, none of that so far.
That's good. Do you guys do health testing, hips, joints, things like that?
Not right now. A lot of people are for that, and I'm not against it. Like I said earlier, I'd like to go to people's yards and see the whole family of dogs on the yard if I can. That, to me, that's a good indicator. But we do have a company that's reached out to us wanting to partner with us, and they are in that type of field. So I'm definitely looking into it. I believe breeding, there's a science to it. So if we do the health testing and things of that nature, it may help us get to our end result quicker. But as far as the pin hip or the OFA, that's not something that we've done yet. I have my own theories on that. I don't know if I will let the cat out of the bag on that and have everyone blast me for that. But as of right now, no, that's not anything that we're doing.
I gotcha. For the record, this is Bred Canines. You can say whatever the hell you want.
Well, here's the way I look at that. There's 90 million dogs in the United States. There's 330-something million people. Whenever we get with a spouse and, we recreate life, we're not asking our spouses to go get all this health testing and things like that done. That's the way I view it is, why are we overcomplicating dogs, I guess you could say. That's my theory on it. I'm very new to this. 5 years down the road, I could completely change my mind on that. Wolves and coyotes and things like that, they don't get any of that stuff done. And they seem to somehow keep on existing. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I like how you keep things neutral like that. I respect that. I see you're very careful with your wording on things, and maybe I can take a page out of your book sometimes.
Well, I've learned that I'm never going to stop learning, and any of my opinions that I have today might not be the same 5 years down the road, because I plan to continue to educate myself, and if I learn more about something that could persuade me to change my opinion. So that's the way I look at it. And everything that I'm telling you in this interview is where I stand right now, but doesn't mean it's set in stone for sure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's what potential part 2 interviews are for,
Right.
If we develop more questions or if you develop new ideas, I definitely want you to jump back on with me.
Sure.
But this has been a pleasure, man. That's all the questions I had, but actually, is there anything you would like to say based on your experience to anybody new to this?
One thing that I would say was just to be always willing to learn and don't get tunnel vision on anything. Keep an open mind about things, because just like I mentioned, my opinions now may be different down the road, and I think everybody should leave the opportunity to learn open at all times, no matter how long you've been doing it.